My name is Oscar Mario Rodriguez. I was born in Alajuela, Costa Rica in 1964. I have two kids, Joshua and Emily, and my wife Evelyn. I work as a vice principal for student affairs at Greater Miami Adventist Academy. I went to college, did my bachelor's in education, and then I did my master's degree in school administration. I love to cycle. As recent as 2 years ago, we had the privilege to cross the state of Florida in our bicycles for a total of 174 miles. It took us more or less 10 hours and 45 minutes. And it was amazing to see the sun rise on the East Coast and then see the sunset on the West Coast close to Tampa, Florida. So that was a very good experience, and I thank God for that. I have been a teacher since 1989. I have been working as a vice principal for Greater Miami Adventist Academy for the last 15 years, and I just enjoy teaching. There is nothing better to me as an educator than when I see students just go, now I get it. So teaching is an exciting part of my life. I have made friends, lifelong friends, through teaching. I still have contact with some of my students, and so it's been great. It's been a great experience. I cannot complain. Most people would not imagine that I have been so-called successful, that I am where I am today. But the fact is that not everything started like it is right now. I was born in July of 1964. 11 months later, in June of 1965, I was adopted by my parents. What's interesting is when I was 7 years old is when they told me that I was adopted. And I remember not feeling sad or anything about it. To me, it wasn't a big deal. I guess because of my age, I didn't understand what that implicated, besides the fact that they were wonderful parents. But what's interesting about this is that when I was 7 is when they told me that I was adopted, but then they get divorced when I was 8. So now that I look back, I see that at 7 years old, I now have some sense of belonging because these are my parents, even though, they're not my biological parents. But then at 8, a year later, now they split. I'm still surprised today that I didn't turn insane because, when I started having a sense of belonging, all of a sudden, now, they're going their separate ways. That was extremely painful for me. I still remember the fact that, because we lived here in Miami at the time, after the divorce, my father and I moved to Puerto Rico, and my mother moved to the Florida Keys. And I remember coming every Christmas and every summer to be with her. And the most painful part I still remember was when I got on the plane. During those times, I don't know about now, but during those times, they would allow your parents to go inside the plane, sit down with you for a little bit. And I remember when it was time to leave, she would get up and started leaving, looking back and just going like that. Oh, that was not good. That was extremely painful. Um, a divorce is always, separation is never helpful. It's never good. Those are scars that you will always have until you die. They will not go away. They're just there. And that started sort of a trend in my life of not belonging. I started developing very deep feelings of low self-esteem. I in school, or if I liked a girl, I remember this particular girl that I really liked her, but I never spoke to her, never talked to her, because I never started anything, because I was convinced that I was never going to finish it in the first place. So that's the type of low self-esteem that I had. My grades were always low. My GPAs were always 1.2, etc., etc. So that was really a very difficult time for me. One of my best friends, Otto, he was also in college with me. He was one of the few friends, if any, that I had that was able to listen. And when we listen, we help other people to feel, this sense of belonging. But he made a mistake in his life, and now he had to leave college. So now, I have this great friend. He listens to me. He understands where I'm coming from, and now he has to leave college. Also during my college years, my grandfather, which I was also close to, passed away. Whenever I got close to somebody, they pushed me away, which is one of the reasons I was not good finding love, if you will, a good girl, etc. So that led me to a life of going to prostitute centers frequently. When I met these ladies, I could see, I could feel, even if it was for maybe 10 minutes, whichever time, I felt this sense of belonging. And at times, honestly speaking, I was not as interested in having sex, but as someone that would listen to me, or even to the point having someone that I could listen to, because as weird as it may sound, listening to someone would actually help me. That sense of belonging was just not there. So that really affected me, not only my grades or my social life, but in my entire life as a whole. I was literally what I would call myself at the time a walking loser, and it all was because I thought that I could not do anything. So that's why I never tried. It was a waste of time. Everything started changing in my life for the better when I started knowing who Jesus was. And it's interesting that there were some people in my life that were key. There was a gentleman, Angel Ortiz, who was instrumental. He was the captain of the softball team of our church, and he quit his team just to make a team out of us, form a team of us young people, just to get us out of the street, just to get our attention. We didn't learn so much softball from him as much as we started learning personally, especially me. On a personal level, I started learning who Jesus was. He would call, he would always love us, even when we made mistakes. He was a difference maker in my life. Along with Pastor Pedro Lopez, he would open the gym of our academy in our conference in the east side of the island of Puerto Rico every Saturday night. And I remember it was 2, 3 in the morning, and he would be with his son, who at the time was a baby, just asleep. At that time, as we were, playing basketball, volleyball, etc., I do remember quite vividly watching him with his son, like literally asleep, because they understood that when you love, you make sacrifices, you make time for people. Loving people is caring. Jesus cared. And I could see Jesus through Angel, through Pedro, because who does that? 3 in the morning with a baby in a gym? No, man. You have to love. You have to have Jesus in your heart. And that's what they did. And what I love the most about those 2 gentlemen was that they were never preaching or stuff. They would show Jesus' love to us through what they did. Their actions spoke so loud. They didn't have to say a word about Jesus. They were already showing us who Jesus was. There was another gentleman in college named Luis Gutierrez. He was also key. He was the business manager, the administrator at the time. And I did something also in that college. I remember I came up with the idea that let's go drinking on a Friday night. I bought all the alcohol and stuff, and I invited my friends, and we just got drunk. It was not good. Obviously, we were caught. It was a boarding college, and we were expelled for obvious reasons. And I remember the day after I was expelled, he called me into his office. Bear with me, because Luis Gutierrez knows me since I was 6 years old. So he knew me. We had a relationship. And I remember that he brought me to his office. He told me, sit down. He had a newspaper on his desk. And I remember him showing me the cover of the newspaper, which I still remember was called El Vocero. And El Vocero was actually very iconic in Puerto Rico because it was the only newspaper that would portray or would always have on the cover people that were shot, people dead, and blood all over the place, very gory, etc. And I remember him showing me the front cover of the newspaper and telling me, if you keep on the way you are, you're gonna end up like this. It hit home because he wasn't screaming. He wasn't emotional about it. He was rationalizing exactly what he was saying. And then he said, I think you get in trouble because you don't think you can be successful. But I'm telling you right now that this is something that you can actually do. Why don't you at least try it? What Jesus has done for me is that through all those people that I mentioned prior, he let me know that he had a place for me. Because remember, I said earlier that I didn't have this sense of belonging. And whenever I got close to someone, they just went away. They just left my life. But when I met Jesus, I started realizing that I do belong. I can belong to someone. And it's not only the fact that I can belong now to a team, that I can belong to a club or a group, but the fact that now I can be part of the most amazing person in the universe. My name is Oscar Rodriguez, and this is my Jesus story.